This is Sporting Life.
Welcome along to the Sporting Life Racing Podcast. David Orr, joined by Matt Brocklebank, Graham Cunningham, Billy Nash and Ed Chamberlain. I'm going to talk about one or two news stories, reflect on last weekend's action, look ahead to the King George at Ascot and a cracking renewal of the Sky Bet York Stakes as well. But before then, let's talk about ITV1, Ed. Let's talk about 9 o'clock on Fridays. Champions Full Gallop premiered with us in BAFTA last week. I don't discuss the lavish.
You enjoy the canapes?
No, I didn't. Well, I did, but the mackerel one was very strong tasting. That's my number one complaint. But the first 3 episodes available on ITVX. The first one is aired on ITV1. What have you made of the reaction, Ed, to the documentary?
It's got people talking, hasn't it? Which is good, which is very good. And I'm going to be interested to hear what you guys think about it, more interested to hear what the wider audience think about it. A lot of people have had their say, which is fine, but racing is quite extraordinary, honestly. And GC, I've learned from you now. I've learned from you. I've just been laughing at so many different things that would have wound me up. I've learned from the great man.
Yes.
But racing is remarkable. The analogy I would use, Audie, and I might be wrong here, is that with horse racing getting coverage at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, it's a little bit like racing folk being given a £500 voucher just for free, give you a £500 voucher for a shot like, let's say, WH Smith's. And in normal circumstances, I think any normal person would be absolutely delighted. But it feels like racing sometimes go, nah, I'm not having that. I want it for Waterstones. That's a little bit what it feels like. This documentary, dramatization, whatever you want to call it, isn't necessarily for you. TV is subjective. People are going to like things, not going to like things. What I would encourage racing people to do is, if they've got ideas, give them to the production company, give them to RMG and Flutter, who've done such a good job with it. Yes, I'd love to see more betting in it. I don't need to rant about it. I'm just going to ask, in Series 2, could we do this? Could we do that potentially? And what I would encourage people to do is show it to wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, kids, because the reception I've had, I was at Newbury on Saturday, and that is a sort of racing crowd, though most of them were there to see Sigala. I know Billy and GC and Matt, I'm sure, are big Sigala fans. And I got it. Sorry?
Did Sigala win the Super Sprint?
Absolutely. Bolted up. But Audie, I wish there'd been a camera on me, because I got stopped literally everywhere I went with everyone wanting to talk about one thing, and that was Champions Full Gallop. Some people don't like the name even and have ranted about that. People have been putting it on a poll, Audie, and judging from 2,000-3,000 people from a poll on X, whatever you put on there for your followers, they will vote for the worst scenario. That is what X does. What is the point? Honestly. But I got stopped left, right, and centre, and that got a great reception there. I've never been stopped so often in Andover, people saying, oh, my kids watched it and loved it. I know that's a very small poll, but that's what this is all about. This is about Louise watching it. This is about people's kids watching it and engaging with racing. And I thought it was pretty entertaining, but it's not for me either. And would I do things differently? Yes. Do I need to rant about it? No. Might I put some ideas for Series 2? Absolutely. And that's the way the world works, in my opinion. But I'm laughing about it, I promise.
You see, I thought Ed's final 3 points there most of us would feel, isn't it? It's people will do things differently. Might like to see something different. I've never made a documentary. I don't know, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the first 3 episodes.
But it's not, Audie, let's be honest, it's not for you. It's not. No. It's for your partner. It's for friends. It's for all sorts of people to hopefully see racing and what fun and what a brilliant sport it is. And it's not sanitized. Watch episode 2. You will see Sean Bowen and Fire and Glory get buried at Aintree with commentary from someone called Graham Cunningham.
Oh, really? Oh, wow.
You're on there, JC. You're on there.
Oh, where's the royalties?
Right.
There's no payment in this, Billy. Let me assure you of that. I can absolutely assure you of that.
I'm crossing out all my criticisms now if I know that I'm in episode 2. No, I agree with pretty much all of what Ed said there. I was hoping this series, not the series, the heat around it would give me some funnies. It hasn't disappointed. I've got a top three, but it could have been 10. But in the interest of brevity, the top three are as follows: all a certain category of people who are on the fringes of this sport, drawing themselves up to their full height and drawing on all their BAFTA winning experience to do that old Harry Enfield of "you don't want to do it like that."
Steven Spielberg's everywhere. Can we go 3, 2, 1, GC? Build the tension a bit. I can't wait for this.
Number two, I thought this had to be number one, but something's come flying in over the top. I've saved the tab on my laptop ever since it appeared on Sunday. Racing Pulse piece. I cannot believe that I'm the only one who laughs out loud when I see this stuff. Market Raisin credits ITV docuseries for increased crowd on Summer Plate Day on Saturday. The idea, what time did the program finish on Friday?
10 o'clock.
10 p.m. The people would watch the program and say, quick, it's 10 o'clock on a Friday. Get on the website and book some tickets for Market Raisin. When you read the piece, I'm not sure the Market Raisin boss ever did credit the series. There's no direct quote along that. But the fact that the audience lapped that up like mother's milk, there is a cultish thing about certain people in this sport. We know it, and that was brilliant. But the best, and some people say this is a subdued podcast space. I will credit Emmett Kennedy and Paul Jacobs for one of the funniest 25-minute pieces of broadcasting I've ever heard. I was on a train yesterday. I was laughing out loud all the way along as they both said, yeah, it was good. It was really polished, well put together, and then went on a 25-minute rant of tearing this thing to pieces from the title to every other aspect. But the piece de resistance came from Paul Jacobs, who said he could not believe that the producers of this show, or one of the stars of this show, did not have someone on the BBC's One Show the previous week to plug it and flag it up. Nice. Like the BBC are going to plug a primetime ITV show. And I thought this sport is just delivering on every level. And they're my three little funnies, but there could have been many more. Let's face it. People have been saying for months and years, racing needs a Drive to Survive documentary in order to show non-believers what this sport is all about. It gets it. And then guess what? People are fighting like rats in a sack. It's fun, it's polished, it's colourful, it's vivid. If I have one minor quibble, sport is all about two things. Life and drama are all about two things: heroes and villains. If you can show both, you're onto something.
Then the irony not lost that Nicky Henderson's complaint in the Racing Post yesterday was that there wasn't enough scene of Constitution Hill.
My mole suggests that there could be an interesting shot of Henderson telling the crew to, how shall we say, buzz off at some point. I hope that makes the cut. But as long as I'm in there, I'm happy.
Can I ask you a question with Formula One that just Drive to Survive? If you're a real F1 geek, would you enjoy Drive to Survive? I would suggest probably not.
Yeah, it's a fair point, I'd say, yeah.
But I've not seen it. I've not seen the.
It's brilliant.
The document.
It's absolutely brilliant. And I'm not a Formula One fan, and it does exactly the job it needs to do.
And is it broadcast in Ireland? Get people seeing the new documentary in Ireland?
Yeah, I was able to watch it on Friday night on ITV, and I did miss the start of it, but I sat down to watch it with my wife, and she has absolutely no interest whatsoever in racing. And her view on the thing was, first of all, she said, well, sure, you all already know who won this race, which was true. And then she said, oh, well, I'm going to go to bed. So there you go. That's her short review of Champions Full Gallop. Sorry about that, Ed.
Good effort. I mean, I watched, Dave, I watched the first episode on the same day that I saw Despicable Me 4, and I wrote down, felt a bit rushed, very far-fetched, and not enough genuine belly laughs, but that was just the Minions, of course. Full Gallop. I enjoyed it. I really did enjoy it. I thought, I think Harry Compton is obviously one of the real stars who's come out of the first episode, isn't he? He's just cool, isn't he? He was a bit of a legend in my eyes anyway, but this is going to really elevate him, I think, to that wider audience. And I think that's a really important thing, is that all the jockeys that sort of took part in this, they seem to love it. They seem to really enjoy taking part in these interviews and really got their teeth into it. Sheehan was great, I thought. Bryony Frost was brilliant, and Nico dropped the odd F-bomb as well. I just thought it was all pretty appealing, to be honest. I found the Henderson comment quite amusing myself, Dave, to be honest. There wasn't really a story there, was there, to tell with Constitution Hill last season, and him beating Rubo at 1-12 in the Christmas hurdle wasn't exactly, it wasn't really a narrative, was it? Unless I suppose they were going to go on and then watch all those glum faces and watch him work like a drain at Kempton. But yeah, I thought it was a good start.
What people don't realise, I think, and they mean well with constructive criticism, it is bloody difficult to get all these angles into the space that's allowed. Anyone who's been involved in making stuff for telly will know that you're working in extremely tight windows. So you have to select your 4 or 5 key angles that you're going to explore and ride them hard. There is just not room for explainers all over the shop.
One thing that really surprised me is that the words Willie Mullins were never muttered once in episode 1, but I am assured, and I have
Episode 3 already.
Yeah.
And those bloody ITV people having to narrate the story. Oh, why are they having to tell people at home what's going on?
Brian Blessed would have been a lovely voiceover man for that. But I don't know if it's still working. I'll find out.
Oh, he is. He is.
He'll never give the game up, Brian. Now, Billy Nash. Every time I looked up at the telly at the weekend, I was watching a British horse winning a group race.
Embarrassing, isn't it?
I ended up cheering on some of your lads and lasses. Oh, but come on, let them win one. Let them win one. Bring him back to. Let's start with the Irish Oaks.
But hang on, Dave. It's been a bad week for Billy all round. The Brits were making hay in all those big races, and Billy, the Rebel County, went down fighting, but they went down in the GAA final against Up the Banner, the County Clare team, didn't they?
Yes. There's not much to be said for a glorious defeat. GC. Unfortunately,
is his name Tony Kelly?
It was a tremendous match. Yeah,
this is absolute witchcraft with the is it the Slitter? How do you pronounce it?
The Hurley and Slitter. Yeah.
Just how did he score that goal? It's unbelievable.
Well, that's a debate for another podcast, GC. I'm afraid I could talk about it all evening, but I really don't want to because
this is as low as
my crowd were on the wrong end of the result.
But speaking on a serious point, stuff like that, it gets outside audiences more interested in the game, doesn't it? It was I sensed loads and loads of people from Britain going, "Look at this witchcraft with this guy." It was an amazing occasion.
Yeah, apparently it's after getting a lot of traction in Britain this year, which is something that it up until now really hasn't got, So, that's great for the game, as they say. But on to more pertinent matters.
He doesn't want to talk about
that one. It's a sore point.
I promise you, Billy. But Billy, I don't want you to talk for hours on the Irish Oaks, but just tell us, Billy, what did You Got Me's victory mean? What did you make of the race?
First of all, Dave, you'd have to say it was probably a subpar Oaks. We thought that beforehand, and that's the way it turned out. You Got To Me has run to a time form rating of 111, which is nothing to be, too excited about, really. I think the most interesting part about it was Hector Crouch admitting afterwards that, we were all kind of saying, oh, the change in tactics has really suited her. But in fact, it was more by accident than design because she got a bump at the start. He intended to make the running and he ended up being in midfield where he didn't really want to be, but it worked out really well for him. She settled beautifully and finished off her race much better than she had at Ascot. Content, who finished second, you could argue she was unlucky. Graham North, certainly in his column, reckons that she was 4 or 5 pounds the best filly on the day. It's hard to say that for certain because, she did meet trouble in running. It's hard to know exactly how much that cost her. She didn't get as smooth a passage through as the winner, but let's face it, she was out in the clear with a furlong to go and still didn't get to the winner. So whether it actually cost her the victory or not, it's hard to say. It was still a big run from her. Purple Lily back in third, probably didn't quite get home. She travelled really well. Wasn't going anywhere the last furlong, but ran well to 107. And the interesting one I thought was the Dermot Well filly back in fourth, Elizabeth Jane, who had loads to find on the figures going into the race, hadn't performed particularly well in her trial, but a big effort from her. She's a beautifully bred filly. She's by Dubabi out of Sapphire, who was a very good mare for Dermot Weld, who herself is a half-sister to Kyprios. So I think we're going to hear plenty more about Elizabeth Jane. Sapphire was better at 4 than she was at 3. I think it could be the same thing with her. So she might be the one to take out at the race, I think.
DC, it's hard not to draw the conclusion, having watched that Irish Oaks in Azalea, we've lost by far the best filly in that division.
Absolutely. And of course, we only have to look back to last year, maybe this time last year, a bit later. Blue Stocking was looking just one of those smart middle distance fillies who might be rated in the low teens. And 12 months on, she's thrived and she's a prime contender for a King George we're going to discuss. So these fillies can improve, but I would agree with Billy's view that, Azealia is looking a big miss and the rest are, smart Group 2, Group 1 fillies, but they have it to prove if they go in against the boys before too long.
A couple of them from last year, Dave, they ended up running in that, obviously the filly and mares race, so Ascot on Champions Day, and I think that's going to be probably the target for that Weld horse, I'd imagine. Billy, do we think? She's really quite promising, isn't she?
Could well be, and the Dam Sapphire was a bit of a mudlark, she really liked cutting the ground, so I think it could be the same with Elizabeth Jane. Yeah, that would tally with kind of Dermot's way of doing things,
And there's talk of Breeders' Cup for Content, isn't there? 1 mile, 3 round Del Mar. She has got that turn of foot. If, like you say, if she gets out, gets enough running, she obviously stays as well now as well. So, that seems like a pretty obvious target for her.
Absolutely.
One thing we did get, Matt, from the weekend was a new Derby favourite, the Lion in Winter. Now, you did a piece comparing his debut numbers on Time Form to O'Brien's previous Derby debut performances. Where's this colt sitting? Are we looking at something with some substance here?
Well, he does look a little bit out of the ordinary, doesn't he? I know we kind of hear that every year from Aidan O'Brien, but it's not always this early in the year, and I think that's quite an important point to make. Look, this 7 furlong maiden over Oaks weekend has been won by some absolute worldies. We've had Henry Longfellow just last year, and then you go further back, and I think it's still the same race. It was called a bit different, but it's Australia and Teofilo and New Approach. They won it as well. And I suppose the first thing with the Lion in Winter is that he's by Sea the Stars, and he's actually only the 5th, if my maths and Ben Foot's research is correct, 5th offspring by that sire to actually reach the track for Aidan O'Brien. He's had some winners, of course, but we've had a few sort of high-profile flops. I remember Eminence. There was quite big hopes for him at one stage, and there was a horse called Sam, which was really disappointing. I think it was a filly. She didn't win at all, did she? But this one's very, very promising. He defied the market. He defied Ryan Moore. The trip as well, probably an absolute minimum for him on pedigree, 7 furlongs, and he's doing it, in July. If you look back through, all Sea the Stars record with his real stars, his real best horses that have made the track, the likes of Stradivarius, Baid, Harzand, Hookham, Crystal Ocean. It is a very, very long list of top class horses that either didn't make it to the track at all as 2-year-olds or were winning kind of held right back to September, October, November. So I think he could be a little bit extraordinary. This race obviously teed up quite nicely for him on the day. The eventual 2nd and 3rd went at it from quite a long way out, but he came there and did he pick up. He wasn't going away. So yeah, long way to go, but he's pretty exciting, this one, Dave.
See, there's no finer judge of an O'Brien debut winner than yourself. You came home raving about City of Troy last year, having seen him. Did you get the same feel from this fella?
Not quite, but I think, like Matt, medium to longer term, when he gets out to over a mile plus. The interesting thing was there didn't seem any hullabaloo about him before or after from the connections, but it's often the way that the ones who surprise you a little turn out to be really good prospects. And he wasn't even winning that race entering the final furlong. And at the line, he's winning it good looking and going away quite quickly. So it was a mighty, mighty impressive performance. And you have to think at the moment, he would be leader of the pack to run in what I call the Observer Gold Cup, what was the Racing Pulse Trophy. It then was the Vertem Futurity. I don't know what it's going to be called these days, but that big Group 1 at the end of the season at Doncaster would look a really prime target for him, unless they think he's going to be quick enough for a national stakes in a few weeks' time.
Billy, the Time Form Big P has been brandished in his direction as well.
It has, yeah. You'd have to say, Dave, the way he won the race, and the lads have described it there, he did look like a horse that had loads more in the tank. And surely when he steps up and trip, Matt touched on it. If you look at his breeding, by Sea the Stars, his dam won over 1.5 miles. So everything screams 3-year-old middle distance. He will get better with time. He will get better when he goes up to a mile. So I think there's loads to be excited about with him. And Aidan touched on perhaps the Futurity. That's the race that Henry Longfellow won last year, having won this maiden. And incidentally, I think this maiden is the only race that his sire See the Stars didn't win. I think he got beaten in this back in the day. So, yeah, look, he's a horse with loads of potential. And like we say, the large P is on him. So we think there's a lot more to come from him.
Before we head back to some more of the Irish action, you were at Newbury on Saturday for ITV. We had the Hackwood Stakes. We saw Elite Status win that. How high do you think he's going to end up flying?
Yeah, it was a polar opposite to the July Cup, wasn't it? When the 3-year-olds were eclipsed. In the Hackwood, it was a 3-year-old 1, 2, 3. I still think Lake Forest might be over 7. There's a nice race in Lake Forest. Again, flying at the finish. And the winner's interesting, Audie. I think the winner's got plenty of potential. Obviously, a challenge for Carl Berg, who's so open and good with the media, Audie. And I thought you described the problems he has with Elite Status and him knocking his joints really well and the boots he wears. I thought it was the back leg hitting the front legs that was causing the problem and taking the scabs off. But it sounds like he's almost like a human being pigeon-toed, if you like, and the legs knocking together. So he's got a challenge. And what was most interesting was he won the Hackwood, where from the trainer, it sounded like he was nowhere near 100% fit, was the quote from Carl Berg. So if he gets a clear run to Haydock and he is fitter, then surely he's a big player. But that's a big if with the issues they have with him.
GC, what a season again Carl Berg is having. We'll touch on some more group success at the cover. Graham North in Watching Learns touched upon the changing dynamics in the North when it comes to big winners at the big meetings. Berg now firmly leading the way. He's got the Midas touch at the minute.
He has. He's got real depth. He'll have Royal Rhyme in the Skybet York Stakes this weekend. He'll have plenty of fancied runners at the Qatar Goodwood Festival next week. The depth has just been, it's been really relentless over the last few years. And we should touch on the jockey angle as well. I was thinking initially that Clifford Lee might have a tricky from the Haydock Spring Cup if he has to choose between Elite Status and Swing Along. But if I'm Clifford, I'm not jumping off any of the horses who are owned by the Sheikh who must be obeyed in a hurry, because that might have negative implications down the line. But Swing Along, after her last 2 runs, and Elite Status, they're both prime contenders for Haydock, I think.
Matt, let's touch upon Poet Master, who won over in Ireland, and very exciting prospect in his own right. You'd imagine there's a big day with him somewhere, summer or autumn.
Yeah, I was just going to say there, Dave, with Carl Berg, the situation, I suppose, now has got to that stage where he's got really strong backing, and GC is absolutely right. I'd say they have to keep him happy, and they are keeping the owner very happy. His record in Ireland's good. I suppose, like, have we got to that stage now where one Group 1 this season? He's going to want to build on that, isn't he? He's going to want to finish even stronger than that. I think he had 2 Group 1 winners last year, Fallen Angel being one of them, and she's obviously won the Irish Guineas this time around. And prior to that, he had a little bit of a lull after Havana Grey and Lawrence. So he's very much back in the big time, and I think he will want to kick on now and look at nailing those 2, 3, 4 Group 1 winners through a campaign where possible. Poet Master, just the sort of horse now that is going to be challenged, take him into that sort of next level. He's a bit like Elite Status, isn't he? And that when they have him right, he's looked really, really, really good. He can throw in the odd stinker. If you go back to that handicap win at Newmarket, kind of the writing was on the wall, I think, with him, because the second one is next start nicely in a handicap, and the third, Misty Grey, has come out and won next 2 races, now rated 108. So Poet Master beat that one half a length, giving it weight. So yeah, he's got tons of class, this horse. He proved it in a race that he was entitled to win at the weekend, but now rated 1, 2, 3 with time form. I think he deserves a shot at something big.
He's got a very seems to have a very neat handle on finding those Group 3s and Group 2s abroad in Ireland and France, Burke, as well, doesn't he? If you have a look at Araby, 2-year-old who's won a Group 3 and a Group 2 in France already, and for the last 2 or 3 years now, he's been nicking those races. I can't wait to see Fallen Angel again. I don't know when that'll be, but she is potentially one of the, well, certainly the ace in his 3-year-old pack.
Yeah, maybe in the 2-year-olds as well.
In the 2-year-old pack, the horse that came out of the Coventry, I can't wait for that horse again, because the vibe was that's the best of his 2-year-olds, and look what he's done with the others. So that could be very exciting as well. I can't remember the name, Audie. Can you remember?
I was desperately trying to think of it then as well. I'll try to work it out before we get there. Billy, one line on the cover winner. The comment in the Time Form report from the analyst, as I will eventually get to say, is that he's already operating the sort of level that would win a Sky Bet City of York Stakes, which looks the obvious next stop for him.
Yeah, big figure, 123 Ardy. That was a big jump from him, but it was a very impressive performance. So yeah, you'd have to think they'd be thinking along those lines with him. As the lads were saying, Carl Burke has been doing really well in Ireland. He had a very good weekend over here. Beautiful Diamond ran a cracker in the sprint on Saturday, and he actually runs one at Naas tonight. He has a 2-year-old going in the listed race at Naas tonight called Miss Lamai, who finished 4th in the Queen Mary, and she's going to take a lot of beating. She's certainly going to set the standard there tonight. So yeah, he seems to be coming over here more often, and you know he doesn't come here just for the sake of it. He's got a good record in Ireland.
And a sight.
There you go.
Pinatubo Colt once raced, won at York, is entered in the Jim Crack, and the National Stakes.
Thank you.
And the horse he beat at York was Yarmo B there, who won that nice race at Newbury on Friday, didn't he?
Yeah, did it quite nicely as well, didn't he? That GC, we touched upon the sprint, and it's not a deep division. We've no idea what's going to be champion sprinter. Could Believing pick up a big pot somewhere along the way?
Well, she's hardy, isn't she? You know, she went to Hong Kong and it seemed the ground went against her. I bet George Bowie's dead frustrated about that because he was hopeful she could put up a bold show. I'm not sure even a peak form Believing would have been good enough, but either way, it seemed she got stuck in the mud. A few did that day. But since then, she's been really busy. Ran twice at Royal Ascot and led home a 1-2-3 in a winnable. It was a Group 2 contest at the weekend. So I don't know whether she'll go to Goodwood or York. But it looks like she is set for another crack against the Aussie sprinter Asfora and throw in Big Evs, etc. And you know they look among the pack leaders at the moment in the sprint division. But the good thing about her is, although she's not a superstar on ratings, she's rocking up at all the major shows and running really well.
You'd have to think they'd probably think about bringing her back to the Curragh for the Flying Five as well. You know, that looks like a logical target for her.
Cherry picking the Group 1 in Ireland, Billy.
There is talk of turning her out again at Goodwood, so hopefully they do.
Yeah, you need them to turn up horses like her in all these big shows, don't we? Billy, let's talk about one of the more remarkable performances of the weekend. Tower of London in cutting down Grosvenor Square to win as he did. I couldn't see Ryan Moore shouting to Wayne Lord, and it's me. It looked like he put him down without any assistance, and some very impressive fractionals along the way as well, if you read Graham North's piece.
It was an extraordinary performance, Ardy, and I suppose the extraordinary thing about it is when you look at Grosvenor Square, the horse that made the running, you look at the finishing sectionals of Grosvenor Square, he finished in a finishing speed of 100.2%, which means he was travelling probably as fast at the finish as he was for most of the race, so he didn't go as fast as it looked to the naked eye. You'd think watching the race, he's gone out, they've let him go, he's gone too far, they won't get it, or he'll just fall in the hole and come back. But he didn't really stop. It was Tower of London with a pretty phenomenal change of pace in the straight under supremely confident ride from Ryan Moore. At the 2 furlong pole, according to Graham North, he still had 14 lengths to make up on the leader. And yet Ryan was happy to sit until the 2 pole, shook him up there, never went for his stick, went and won quite cosily, but completed the final furlong in 11.15 seconds, which is absolutely rapid. It was the fastest final furlong of the whole weekend, even faster than the likes of Believing in a 5 furlong sprint. So it just goes to show how much ability this horse has. It was a hugely impressive performance by him. Aidan was talking about the Melbourne Cup afterwards, but I wouldn't be surprised if they decide to drop him back to 1.5 miles after that, because there's clearly a load of speed in there. He's a really talented horse. I think they'll want to get another Group 1 out of him, and he's certainly heading in that direction, I think.
That's the thing, isn't it, GC? We don't know what he is. We don't know if he's 1.5 miles. We don't know if he's a stayer. We just know on his day he's very good.
Well, it's interesting. He's never raced at 1.5 miles since a listed race at Leopardstown last June, but he is showing that sort of speed. I think they'll be guided by his next run, but I think the Melbourne Cup will be a real temptation. It's one of the few worldwide majors that Aidan hasn't won. He's had a pretty checkered record there. I think he was called back heading to the airport by the Flemington stewards one year to explain his pacemaking tactics for a couple of his stars. I don't think that went down well at all. A quick quiz. Can you name the horses, 3 of them, who finished in the first 3 from Ballydoyle in the Melbourne Cup? There have been 3 of them. They're not
Max
easy to
Dynamite?
get, actually.
Max Dynamite won?
No,
Ballydoyle, Matt.
he didn't even train Max Dynamite, Aidan O'Brien.
Ballydoyle.
Um,
What is a top jump sire these days?
was it Scorpion?
No, Marla.
Oh, yeah.
And you'll never get Johannes Vermeer. He was second as well, I think.
So you think in the mix? No.
No, he didn't train him in those days. So you think he came to Aidan after his Melbourne Cup exploits. And Tiger Moth recently, remember? I don't think he ran after that. Tiger Moth was looking a real good horse. So
Tough quiz.
He's gone
That's
close,
of
but
course.
he sums it up by saying, others have done a better job than me. But I'm sure there's an itch waiting to be scratched there.
Really, final word on the action in Ireland. Diego Velasquez back to winning ways and in some style too, racing away from the pack but thundering clear. Any idea, any suggestion whether he's going to sit by the end of the season?
Hugely impressive performance already, but one I'd be slightly sceptical of for the reason that I think, and we've seen it at Leopardstown before, I think swinging wide at Leopardstown is a big advantage. Ryan Moore was at pains to keep him off the inside rail, going down the back even, off the churned up ground. And when they came into the straight, he got pushed even wider by Chris Hayes, but he was happy to stay out in the middle. And even when the horse started drifting out into the centre of the track, he didn't try and correct him. Diego Velasquez, I think, would have won the race in any case. It didn't matter where they ran him or where he rode him, he'd have won the race. He was that superior. But it's hard to just quantify exactly how much he achieved. We could easily have given him a rate in the mid-20s. We've settled on a rating of 119. It was definitely a big step back in the right direction from him. Where they'll go after here, not entirely sure. Aidan was talking about perhaps the Cox Plate. They might go travelling with him, but like I said, I'd love to see him do it again, and he'll need to do it again in Group 1 company now because he's come up short in Group 1s the 3 times they've tried him in it. So, but yeah, much more positive signs. They'll be delighted with that, and they have a horse to go to war with now for the second half of the season, wherever that may be.
Time for 1 or 2 news stories. Now, we have to start with by far the saddest of the week, and it goes without saying our thoughts all with Alice Proctor, who suffered a fractured spine in a fall at Cartmel and remains in intensive care. And Ed, the Injured Jockeys Fund issuing statements there to support when needed. Just again goes to show how vital the work and any support that the Injured Jockeys Fund receives is.
Yeah, and how tough this game is. I mean, honestly, you feel so much for her family and her, what she's going through. It's devastating, and it doesn't sound good at the minute. We'll keep all our fingers crossed and our prayers with her and her family. Yeah, the Injured Jockeys Fund. Listen, I'm the vice chairman of it and very proud of it, but it's tough. I sit on the cases committee, and the things you have to hear, and your natural inclination is you want to help everybody, but you can't. These centres, Taunton, Scotland now, and obviously the 3 big ones, Jack Berry, Peter O'Sullivan and Oaksey House, that's nearly £5 million a year you're talking about just to run them. So we need everyone's help. We had Graham Lee the other day at our 60th birthday celebrations with his family, which was quite extraordinary. And some extraordinary people, incredible people work with the Injured Jockeys Fund and the beneficiaries. It's not just, it's families, it's people who've long since retired from the saddle, point-to-point riders, jockeys, and as inspiring it is, it also breaks your heart at times. And what Alice is going through, your heart really, really goes out to her.
Absolutely. And GC, the contrast at Cartmel, Charlotte Jones rides out her claim a day later. And what a fantastic achievement that is for her.
Yeah, well said, Ed. And talk about a stark contrast between one very young female rider having, what seems to be a life-changing injury, and one still slightly under the radar rider who's worked hard to ride those 75 winners to ride out her claim. And it's an amazing stat. Every one of those winners for her main trainer, her only trainer really, in terms of winners, Jimmy Moffat. So backing up from the Bryony Frost story, which was covered on the telly last week, female riders, females in general in society, still have to fight for everything. And Charlotte Jones is a good jockey. You can watch her at Cartmel and plenty of other northern tracks, and she's got real colour and character. she's done really well to ride 75 winners, and it's a shame that she hasn't got a little more support, and I doubt that'll change now she's ridden out her claim. But between her and Moffat, and this was their first winner since I think Boxing Day at Aintree, they won a nice handicap hurdle, so they've had a lean time of it. But no, the contrast between Alice and Charlotte at the weekend was incredibly dramatic. And I spoke to some people. I was at a do on Sunday, some non-racing people who'd been and had what they thought was a terrific day out at Cartmel at the weekend, and they didn't know either of these stories. And that's the thing, we're in a little bubble where we're very aware of what's happening to all the people involved, but most people who are at the races for a day, and this is very pertinent as regards watching TV shows at 9 o'clock on a Friday night, they don't have any idea about the subtleties and nuances. They are there for the day out and the show.
Absolutely. And then talking of the show, one Cobden's the breakouts. Like Paul Nicholls, I can't take my eyes off the screen when he's on, because he's just brimming.
You wait. Have you seen episode 3? Did you say?
No, I've got it to watch.
It's hilarious. Honestly, him watching Ginny's Destiny get beat by Grey Dawning is LOL.
I mean, talk about heart on the sleeve. Now he didn't take. The Chris Giles dispersal sale was at Doncaster on Monday. Paul came back with the 8 that they wanted. 1.9 million spent in total on the 11 horses, I think, that went through the ring. 660,000 for a dual bumper winner. They still want these. They're still prepared to buy into this jumping dream, despite what problems the winter game might face.
Amazing, isn't it? And I don't know whether you spoke to him at the premiere it was, and he was very on edge about it, very nervous about it. And it sounded like he was even more nervous on the day. But in typical Nicholls fashion, he got himself really well organised, didn't he? He knew exactly who he wanted to keep. He knew exactly what these horses meant to his staff, but he also knew he's got that incredible backing. Jed Mason, the Hales family, and Fergie. And it's brilliant to have. I go on and on about it. The biggest problem in the sport, in many ways, in jumping, is that domestic owners either aren't having a go or they're having their horses trained in Ireland. Well, we've got a set of owners who are having a right go with a British trainer, and I hope it works out for them, because it needs to be encouraged. But that is an awful lot of money, isn't it? Eye-watering.
Billy, I did have to have a chuckle. I don't think we've done a bit of on the one that went for 660,000, but Gordon Elliott had the catalogue in the air for a couple. He went through obviously the same, and Paul walked away with a big one there. It's difficult time when you're losing owners from the sport. And the one thing that struck me, the people who are buying them, they're old men. It's people at the autumns of their ownership career. There isn't a wave of youngsters coming through with the disposable cash to get involved at this level.
No, there doesn't seem to be, but then, not many youngsters have that amount of disposable cash, I suppose. Yeah, it's a good point you make, though. They are like Jed Mason, John Hales, Sir Alex Ferguson. Yeah, they've been in the game a long time. But yeah, it's going to be pressure on Paul Nicholls now this year. He's not only Regent Stroll for 660, but he has Caldwell Potter for 700 and whatever. So yeah, he's going to need to produce the results now for these owners this year.
And Nicholls is not unlike Fergie in his management role of managing everyone. And Ed touched on a really interesting point there. I thought it was really good how Nicholls was very keen to flag up the tensions his staff were going through, getting those horses dressed up for the sale ring, etc., but not knowing whether they'd come back. And he flagged it up in a very, very colourful way. And that's what makes him such good telly, because the emotions are very, very close to the surface all the time.
Audie, just on that very quickly, just going back to Carl Burke for 1 second, can I say well done to him and his team, the way they turn their horses out? With elite status, who looked stunning at Newbury on Saturday. It was very noticeable with a crowd round the paddock. A lot of them were there for the music rather than the racing. Proper gasps at how he looked.
Really?
I mean, that is so good for the sport, and I hope they get properly rewarded. It's a real positive, that.
Used to be the bet of the season when Dale Tempest was doing the bet. Now the Richard Fires would win a lot at the Go Racing in Yorkshire Festival there, but nowadays people do seem to go for it. And people commented on ITV. I was watching the coverage on Saturday how magnificent elite status looked as well there. Matt, it's time to look ahead. You're going to skip dibs at Auguste Rodin in the King George. Aidan thinks they've worked him out. It's fast ground, which he looks likely to get, and a positive ride. Are you expecting him to deliver on Saturday?
Has he said positive ride, has he? I'm slightly surprised by that. And I don't know. He was he was fairly positive, wasn't he? I suppose in the Prince of Wales, he sat fourth off quite a strong gallop. Obviously stays that 10 furlongs trip well. Like you say, and I think you mentioned in your excellent horse by horse guide, Dave, it's that forward ride combined with the 1.5 mile trip now that he has to go and do it all over again. He's a tough horse, very tough horse to weigh up. You know, would you be absolutely shocked if he put in a slightly lesser performance now and then they managed to pull him back again for the Irish Champion Stakes? I wouldn't be shocked at all. I certainly see why he's favourite. He has to be favourite based on that last performance. He certainly wasn't running on fumes, was he, at the end of the race at Royal Ascot? And in fact, Ryan Moore's on record, you know, all the time he says he gets to the front and he knows he's done enough. So I've got a huge amount of respect for Auguste Rodin. Obviously, the market speaks volumes for his credentials. I can't see myself backing him, Dave, for so many reasons. You know, he's just not a reliable individual.
See, it's very rare to have a horse with his CV, who we've seen so often, so much evidence of, that it's so difficult to make firm conclusions about.
Yeah, I'm inclined to be quite forgiving on the blog front now. There have been 3 of them, dramatic ones in the Guineas, King George, and at Meydan. More of that race in a moment. But I just wonder whether he can turn up, run well, a solid race, but still be vulnerable at that sort of price. He did run on really gamely at Ascot, but there wasn't a right lot in hand. And the 2 horses who chased him home, Zarakem and Horizon Doré, have got a combined total of 0 Group 1s between them, wins. Now, if you have a look at what Rebels Romance did in Meydan, in the Shima Classic, yes, he had the Saloon Passage, which Auguste Rodin tends to get, thanks to stablemates. But the 5 horses who chased him home that day in the Shima Classic, the 5 horses who chased Rebels Romance home are as follows: Shariar, good quality Japan horse; Liberty Island, Japanese Triple Crown winner in the fillies division; Justin Palace and Emily Upjohn. Those 5 horses were rated 121, 121, 121, 121, etc. So he beat 4 absolute high quality Group 1 horses, and he beat them decisively by 2 lengths. So I think there's a scenario where Gus can run a very, very good race on Saturday and still have his hands full.
Do you for or against the favourite?
Me?
Yes. Oh, sorry, Ed. Apologies.
I'm sorry. I'm happy to go with Rebels Romance and Continuous myself, but others will have different.
What's your view, Ed?
I think on really quick ground, I'd probably be 4. Not at the price, though. I agree with Matt. You know, you wouldn't be keen to go in at 11 to 10. I think they have worked him out. I think they will be positive on him. I think they need to keep him interested. But I'm a great believer that the ground is absolutely crucial with this horse. Aidan always talked about him. Do you remember ahead of the Derby last year about he wouldn't break glass, he just floats. And I think to float effectively, he's got to do that on quick ground. There's a little bit of rain around today, but not much else, so he should be okay. So I think I'd be 4. Well, what do you think about it as a race order? The King George, as you know, is a bit of a bugbear for me. I think it should be the greatest. I think it should be a huge contest, and it's not. And this year, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, it's got Auguste Rodin, but I mean, 3-year-olds are few and far between. No Derby winners. Sunway's okay without being a superstar. What do you think of the King George?
The race, though, is it? It's the fact that the horses 1 or 2 horses who you'd like to be there are from the stable that have got the favourite.
Mm-hmm.
That's
I'd just like to get to a situation where a horse wins a classic or a big race early in the season, rather than saying, "Oh yeah, can't wait for the Arc or the Breeders' Cup." What about our Midsummer Highlight? What about the King George? That's where the status I'd like to get back.
Last year was great. Last year didn't take much selling, did it? It was great with Hookham and Westover and obviously Auguste Rodin.
And it was rated the 4th best race in the world, to be fair to it. Yeah, that was a good one. It's a good one, but it's lost its luster a bit for me.
Yeah.
Really, just picking up on the point that GC made, and Ed, the Ballydoyle team this year, right, we've got Auguste Rodin, he's pointed at it. We don't know who's joining him. Continuous would be an interesting contender. And Luxembourg, who I presume is in as the cover should something go wrong with Auguste Rodin. But then you suddenly work out we're running out of big pots for Luxembourg as well. Have you any sort of inkling on what you think's going to line up?
I really don't, but I would expect them to run one other big gun alongside Augusta Rodin, be that a Luxembourg or a Continuous. I can't see them running the two, but I think they'll run one other. They ran Luxembourg against him in this race last year, and they ran Luxembourg against him in the Irish Champion Stakes. So wouldn't be surprised if they run him or Continuous, who, I think the Ascot run was probably one that he will come on from. He looked like a horse that would improve from that Ascot run. So I think one or the other of them will run. They'll run Point Lonsdale and Hans Anderson as sort of pacemakers. But if you look at the ratings, Ardy, there's really little to choose between any of these. Luxembourg and Augusta Rodin will be on the same rating, have the same adjusted rating going into this race. There's £1 back to Rebels Romance, there's another £1 back to Continuous, and there's only £2 back to Blue Stocking. So although it mightn't be the highest quality King George of all time, it's going to be a really, really competitive one. I'm a bit like Matt. I find it hard to trust Augusta Rodin. I don't know what he's going to have to do to win me over, but he hasn't got there yet. But I think if you look at a line through Shariar that GC mentioned, Rebels Romance has to be, he possibly deserves to be favourite. There's little or nothing to choose between them, and Rebels Romance has got such a good record in these big races around the world. And I think I was looking at him this morning. I think he's unbeaten in the UK. He doesn't run there very often, but I don't think he's been beaten in the UK yet.
4 from 4.
GC, would it by hook or by crook, world pool wise, they'll have 8 or more, won't they?
I think so. I think it shapes up. Yeah, that's true. But I thought it was interesting a few weeks ago when Ballydoyle came out and said that they wanted to support a world pool race to make sure it had 8. It's not a very wise PR move, that. If you go out and say, well, we're running these horses to fill the race up, and then something goes wrong, that could backfire quite badly. But no, I take your point. It has a gold tint in the rearview mirror, this race, but I think it stands up pretty well. But it's for as long as 1 yard has probably 50% of the best contenders available for the race, it's going to be slightly thinner than ideal. But again, a bit like the Prince of Wales Stakes, some people don't like races with pacemakers. I absolutely do. Now, they can win now and again. Look at Serpentine, etc. But they're just such exciting races, especially at Ascot, when they go a really strong gallop and get them strung out. That was part of what made the Prince of Wales such a compelling spectacle. And I assume that this weekend's race will be run at an end-to-end gallop, and that maybe brings in horses like Middle Earth. Dave, it seems Oisin Murphy has a strong view on the pace needed for Middle Earth.
This is absolutely seamless. Absolutely seamless. Ben Linfoot, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Dave. Loving the show as always. But now it's the best segment. It's the segment with Oisin Murphy. Thanks for joining us. Oisin, how's it going?
Very well, Ben. I'm just in from riding out this morning. I sat on Tropical Storm, who's in really good shape. He's obviously still a maiden, but his run at Goodwood, at Ascot, was excellent.
Good stuff. We'll look out for him at Goodwood. Big weekend, Oisin. King George, Ascot. You must be delighted to be involved.
Yeah, it's a race, obviously, Kipco sponsor, and the history and the amount of good horses that have won it. It just flashed up in my Twitter a minute ago when Harbinger bolted up, beating Cape Blanco and some other stars. So he was an outsider-ish that day, and it'd be fantastic if my ride Middle-earth could play his hand on Saturday. Yeah,
Middle-earth. Obviously, you had a choice to make between Middle-earth and Sunway. Was it an easy decision?
No, it certainly wasn't. Sunway is getting the weight for age and is higher rated. Middle-earth was, one paced last time at Royal Ascot, off a slow pace, and has a bit to find. But Middle-earth will carry Qatar Racing colours, and Sunway carries his majority owner colours, Guy Pariant. So it was, as Sheikh Fahad's family sponsored the race, it was the logical thing to do to ride Middle-earth.
Okay, and like you say, he ran well off a slow pace in the Hardwick Stakes. You would think they'd go a stronger galloping at King George.
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, August Rodin and Rebels Romance are the market principles, and you could see them sitting first, second. Maybe August Rodin on the lead, with Rebels Romance just sat in his tail, and neither of them want to crawl. They'd both be happy to press go as we turn in. So hopefully it'll be an even run tempo, but I don't expect the pace to be crazy, you know.
No. Regardless of how the race is run, it's another step up for Middle-earth, isn't it? I mean, do you think he's ready to get involved in a race like this?
Well, he's certainly ready to have a go at a race like this. You know, it's probably going to be his last run in the UK before he heads to Australia. And depending on how he runs, obviously on Saturday, but if you took his bare form before that, he's going to be one of the market leaders for the likes of the Caulfield Cup. So that's very much on his agenda. And hopefully he can run a career best on Saturday.
Well, best of luck on him this weekend. Would you be going down to Australia to ride him potentially?
Yeah, possibly. The Caulfield Cup, clashes with Clipco British Champions Day. So it'll be very hard to know until a bit closer to the time. But certainly were he to run well in the Caulfield Cup, he's the likely type for a Melbourne Cup. So we'll just have to see how he gets on.
Great stuff, exciting times with Middle-earth. It's not just about the King George on Saturday, Shane. You've got some really nice rides on the undercard, handcuffed for the King. She looked good first time up at Newbury. I
was very impressed with her winning on debut at Newbury, and she came out of the race very well. I actually saw her at home this morning. She didn't do anything crazy, but she's training nicely. This is a step up, but I think she's worked her opportunity at this level. And Serona in the Valiant Stakes, she ran well in the Falmouth. This looks a good spot for her. Yeah, the draw will be important because obviously the Valiant Stakes is on the round course, and everyone knows it's made a lot easier if you have a nice draw. But I think Serona is improving all the time. I was very happy with her. And you know, I respect the 3-year-olds. William Buick, Charlie Appleby have one in there who's unbeaten, but Serona has achieved plenty, and I hope she'll be bang there. Really, you know, particularly at an each way price, Ben. I think she's like 7 or 8 to 1. I can see her being the first 3. And New Century in the Pat Edry Stakes again. Qatar Racing colours by Cameco made a really good impression at Doncaster. Yeah, he's a lovely horse. He's a horse that probably wants a mile already, and he might get 10 furlongs next year. He's maybe not as fast as his father, but he's bred to stay further, and he's a gorgeous horse. I think I'd be disappointed if he wasn't at least up to listed level and better. But I do respect maybe the sharper forward horses over 7 furlongs on Saturday. Yeah, looking forward to him. He looked good on Town Moor. And finally, Shane, 5,000 to 1 potentially in the international handicap, back over 7 furlongs. Yeah, he's a likely runner. He deserves his chance in this sort of race. I had no luck on him at Royal Ascot. He's a good horse. I think 7's actually okay for him, particularly if I can just get him to relax and if I can find some space when I want him to go. It's going to be difficult, obviously, large field, but he's going to be a bit, I think he's like 25 to 1. I mean, 5,000 to 1 is more than capable of winning a race like that. Great stuff. Well, thanks as always, Shane, and good luck this weekend. Thanks very much, Ben.
Matt, and next on my running order is Matt Rocklebank, Blue Stocking. Brave Beckett wants to run. The ground's his worry. Would you roll the dice if you were Rafe and the Juddmonte team, given how the yard are going right now?
It is the big question with her, isn't it? And I suppose, unfortunately, it is the big question with kind of the interesting ones at prices, considering you've got Sunway getting the allowance as well, who would presumably want much softer ground. I would say Continuous. You know, Aidan O'Brien has talked about his rounded action in the past as well, and that he handles soft so well, and he got away with it in the Voltage, didn't he? And he's just last season, but he definitely prefers a little bit of dig as well. And as Billy suggested, I think Luxembourg on decent ground would be the one that joins Auguste Rodin. But yeah, I would imagine they will have a go with Blue Stocking. She was really tenacious, really gutsy, and as we mentioned on a podcast a few weeks back with her, she was looking a bit of a nearly horse, wasn't she? You know, Chin by Warm Heart on a seasonal debut last year, and then went into kind of real solid placed efforts all the way through the campaign, including that one that she probably should have won, the Group 1 Ascot on Champions Day. Now this year, bit of a reformed character. The cheek pieces seem to have helped her out. They were off last time, but she showed a great attitude to reel in Emily Upjohn, who was sort of idling a little bit, having done her thing. I think they'll probably take the chance, Dave, and she's not a million miles off them, as you know fine well and mentioned in your preview. The weight adjusted figures, she's what, Billy, 3 or 4 pounds behind getting the allowance. So yeah, I would say it's going to be hard to resist, Dave, unless it's really, really is quick, rattling fast ground.
And Billy, there are ITV sources that tell me that Jerry Hannon called him Ralph, which is not a very good thing to do.
He did.
Jerry Hannon has called him Ralph twice this year, after Blue Stocking won and after You Got to Me won. So, yeah.
Over here. Wouldn't happen over here. GC fan line on the King George Stewart continuous. It's also I really like as well. But would you have worries about on the ground for him?
Possibly, but I do think he is worth that rating of 120. And I was a little bit underwhelmed by his Hardwick run. He went off 13 to 8. I think he went to about 1.55 in running. All looked to be going well 2 out. And then he just didn't really go on with it. But based on his emphatic Ledger win and his slightly unlucky 5th in the Arc, I think he's a definite place contender. And what I'm encouraged by is by the way that most of the Ballydoyle stars have come on for the first run or couple of runs. If we're looking at Gus, Rodan, we're looking at Henry Longfellow, we're looking at Luxembourg, we're looking at City of Troy, etc. So it's an angle that is worth considering with continuous. I think we might well see a different horse this weekend.
You're at Ascot, but the cameras at York too. Cracking days racing at York and a really good Sky Bet York Stakes as well. Are you expecting, Ed? Are we going to see our absent friend for much of the summer, Passenger, going to turn up? And if he does, what are you expecting from him?
I hope so, because he could be a real. When GC's talked in the last few weeks about middle distance missing horses, it'd be great to have him back. Great to have him back in this, and then maybe have a crack at the Juddmonte International itself, which is shaping up. Well, I'm being a bit negative about the King George. The Juddmonte International is shaping up as the race of the season, the way things stand at the minute. And this is an absolute belter, isn't it? When you look at the entries. It'd be great if Passenger's in there at 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. Alflela, who won it last year. But the key horse is King's Gambit, Audie. King's Gambit. This could be the one for him. I just love that hand that Harry Charlton's got to play. Really excited about seeing him again. And there could be others in the race as well. Royal Rhyme could come here. You could argue this is the race of the weekend up at York. And yeah, I'm potentially really excited about it. But let's wait and see. Let's wait and see if Passenger's in the entries tomorrow morning. If he is, it really is game on. But I'm going to stick with my good friend King's Gambit.
They must have been shaking off offers from Wathnam with a stick, I think, for King's Gambit, both probably before and since Royal Ascot. But I think he's still in the same cause. I'm not a big trends man, Ed. Last 3-year-old to win the Sky Bet York Stakes, best alibi for Sir Michael Stout in 2006. Now I'm not sure exactly how many well-credentialed horses have tried, but it's been a long time between drinks for the 3-year-olds in that race.
You'll hear that on Sky TV on Saturday afternoon as I write it down.
Richard Brown from Wattham on Look on Sunday said that they tried to buy a Royal Ascot horse, one that had finished second, one that had won and hadn't been able to strike a deal. I'd be surprised if it wasn't King's Gambit.
Billy, what about the other one? What about Hand of God?
Yeah.
Well, possibly, possibly. Billy, it's a crackerjack of a renewal, isn't it? What do you think is going to come out on top in this?
Well, on ratings, its Passenger is going to top the field in our ratings order. He's 129p adjusted rating. But interestingly, Alflela, who is £3 below him currently, he's got a current time for master rating of 120 plus. He was rated 126 at the end of his 3-year-old career. We've only seen him 3 times since. He hasn't got back to that level. But, there's every chance that he still can. So even though he's behind Passenger at the moment, I wouldn't be at all surprised with the run under his belt if Alflela could get back to something like his 3-year-old career, or he could be quite hard to beat here, I think. And of course, won the race last year, so we know that everything should suit him at the weekend.
Is he in your calculation, Alflela? How do you see the Sky Bet York Stakes?
For me, Dave.
Oh, that's for Matt. Apologies.
Sorry, Dave. Yeah, he is in the mix, isn't he? I think Ed might be on the one here. I was a little bit shocked by the fact that they stuck this King's Gambit up a stone initially for winning the Royal London Cup, isn't it, at Newbury? But yeah, that
London Gold Cup.
London Gold Cup. Apologies, London Gold Cup. The performance he put in at Ascot looked every inch a group horse in the making, potentially a Group 1 horse. Now, Harry Charlton is on record saying again, it's a springboard potentially into the Juddmonte International. And really, I suppose if you're looking at this from an anti-post point of view, I think he's the one you have to be backing at. What is he, 5-6 to 1? Passenger obviously had the setback. Alflaila, as Billy mentioned, just a little bit fragile perhaps, and didn't quite. He was well back. Don't forget Alflaila on his reappearance. His seasonal comeback after the long layoff, and he does tend to go quite well fresh. So I wouldn't expect him to bounce forward a huge amount. King's Gambit for me, Dave. I think he's really, really promising.
Quick line on King's Gambit, not so much on the horse. Isn't it fascinating to see Callum Shepherd getting really good opportunities these days? It's a balmy thing to say, but that getting shit canned from Ambiente Friendly in the Derby is working out quite nicely for him in a way, isn't it? Good on him.
He's riding well as well, isn't he? Riding full of confidence, which is...
And speaks so well.
Does really good interview. Now, anybody got anything else for the weekend? I know it's a bit early. Is anybody anything else on anyone's radar?
Dave, you didn't mention it, but I heard you were the first one to break out of this sphere and hosting the Betfair podcast. I heard Billy Nash sounding forth on the Nick Luck Daily podcast yesterday, and I popped up on, I don't know whether you know, on the Odds Checker podcast yesterday.
I watched it, JC.
You were great friends of mine, and they looked after me superbly well. But because of that, I've done quite a lot of work on the Ascot card. And I'm not saying these are tips or one-pointers, but I'm just saying that horses to keep an eye on. That Alto, Bunbury Cup winner, emphatic, just a £3 penalty. Must go well in that international handicap. Orazio looks ready for, he's been a money muncher, hasn't he, for a while, but he ran so well in the Wokingham. And Simmering, who I fancied for the Albany Stakes, and she just got caught by a crackerjack fairy godmother late on, but that course and distance form gives her a really good chance in the Princess Margaret. And I don't know whether you've done that fillies race yet. Is it called the Valiant Stakes?
Yes.
I'm looking forward to seeing. She was horrible at your Friendly Soul when really strongly fancied for the Musidora, but her form at Newmarket and the Pretty Polly beating Kalpana looks really solid, and she's back to a mile, I think, for the Valiant Stakes. So I think there's tons of depth on the Ascot card at the weekend, and that's not to mention the Pat Eddery Stakes, which last year gave us not only Rosalian, it gave us Al Musmak, it gave us Dancing Gemini, it gave us Ancient Wisdom, and it gave us Sunway, who we didn't give much of a crack to in the King George, but that was one of the deepest 2-year-old races of the season last year.
My concern from that, Audie, from what you're saying there, GC, for this awardless podcast, you don't normally do this type of homework. Is that what you're suggesting?
No.
Exactly how it came across, Ed.
I can appreciate it, how
Unbelievable.
That came out. But no, I can only repeat that the lads treated me very, very well. And one by one, we're all breaking out to infiltrate these other podcasts. So it's on either you, Ed, or you, Matt, to get on the AK Bets podcast as and when it goes live.
Some of us are in no demand whatsoever, unfortunately.
After my performance on GC's spot quiz, I'm off to host the Minions podcast next week.
In that, Matt, you get that's a franchise to be in. Time has beaten us. Thanks to GC, to Matt, to Ed, to Billy, to Scoop, and O'Sheen as well for dropping in late onto the show. We'll be back next week. I don't know what day. We'll confirm it via social media with our Goodwood preview. Galway 2 coming up. Fantastic time of the racing season. I hope you enjoy plenty of winners during it.
Download the Sporting Life app for the best racing coverage, including live racing blogs, fast results, stable tours, trainer and jockey interviews, expert opinion, and tips.